Hi, I'm Jane Pilger. I'm a binge eating and body trust coach, and I'm excited to be sharing on Conversations with Pearl.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the clouds, you're under. Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain or clear? Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no shade.
Hey everybody, this is Pearl again, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And I'm excited today because we're talking about a subject that I know when I coach women, comes up often. And I know myself in my journey, I've struggled with some of these areas. So I'm excited to have our guest today, Jane Pilger, on. Jane empowers women who feel out of control around food to develop food freedom. How does that sound? And body trust. I'm so excited for this today. She helps women who have been struggling often for decades to find the missing link to go from fighting with their bodies to working with them. Who does not want to have that conversation? So whether you're a binge eater listening today, someone who doesn't trust themselves with certain foods, or someone who just doesn't understand why they behave the way they do sometimes, she's got you. She's got your back. She'll teach you how to understand your behavior, how to develop trust with yourself, and how to cultivate that safety that you need to navigate life. Her approach is rooted in the science of the brain and the body, trauma informed and filled with compassion. And you guys know I talk often about that inner trauma that we deal with. And Jane's other passion, which is really exciting, includes spending time with family and friends, triathlon training and racing, planning the next adventure. She strives to make a difference in the lives of those around her while living a life of love, trust, adventure, and growth. I'm so excited to have you here today, Jane. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Pearl. I'm so excited to be here and just have a great conversation with you today.
Absolutely. So I love this subject about the whole brain thought around food and everything. And we're going to definitely dive into that because, I've struggled all my life in that area. And so I always believe the brain, especially right now, for those that are listening, may or may not know that I lost my son almost a month ago. So that brain going, I got to go to comfort food and all that stuff, right? It can be very overwhelming. So I'm so excited.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm excited to get into that, but I want to go back. I like to start way back when. So I want to know, what was life growing up for you?
Life growing up was amazing. I had such a great childhood. I had great parents. I had a really good time in school. Like when I look back on it, it was great. I had a great childhood. But when I now look back on it, what I realized was missing in that growing up time was really, we didn't do emotions in my house. Like we didn't do them. I never learned really how to handle emotions. When I got upset, I would just leave. I would slam the door. And then the next day, we just kind of would go on like nothing else had happened. And so I don't fault my parents for it. You can't teach somebody something that you weren't taught yourself. But what happened was, when I went off to college, well, actually, even before that, I would say the summer before my junior year of high school, I went on an 8-week, it was like a little mini Peace Corps type of thing. We went to Paraguay. We helped people build latrines in this very small community. And I gained a significant amount of weight in a small period of time. I I came home, I had stretch marks. I had stretch marks on my chest. I had stretch marks on my hips. And I was playing volleyball at the time. And we wore these, they were called like bun huggers, essentially kind of, like basically like what you might refer to as granny panties while you're out on the court. And so you could see my stretch marks. And that was the beginning for me of thinking that my body wasn't okay. It needed to change. I needed to lose weight. I started, counting the calories and going to the gym to burn it off and doing all of these restrictive things. Then I went to college, and my first year of college is really when my binging began. And I know now it's because I had so many emotions. There were so many things. I mean, anybody going off to college is going to go through a lot, but I didn't know how to deal with that. I've since learned that I'm actually a pretty sensitive person, and I have a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions, and sometimes some pretty big ones. But I didn't even know that's what was happening, or that's what was going on. And so my first binge was my very first semester in college. Somebody had sent me a care package full of little miniature candy bars. And I don't remember the binge itself, but what I do remember is sitting on the floor up against the door of my dorm room, just surrounded by empty wrappers and thinking, oh my gosh, what have I just done? And I proceeded to be on this cycle of trying to restrict myself and then binging. And I was very much trying to stop this terrible thing, but I was also very much trying to change my body and not eat very much. And, there were all these emotions and these things going on inside of me that I didn't really know. So I was really using the food to kind of escape and cover up. And all the while, this is like my own little just internal battle because I was terrified. I was so ashamed of what I did. I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. I just needed to stop this terrible thing. And I really internalized the message growing up that for me, love and belonging came from succeeding. So either being smart, being, the smart kid, or, doing and achieving was kind of how nobody ever told me this. It's just how I internalized. And so I have this, it was like I was leading a double life for so long, where on the outside, here I am, I'm doing all these great things, I'm achieving, I'm, kind of going off into this career as a CPA and then commercial real estate, and I'm winning awards and I'm doing all of these things. But inside, I am a mess. I don't really realize what's going on, but all I know is that I just want to stop binging and I can't. And I tried and I tried and I went to therapists. I went to 2 rounds of intensive outpatient therapy at a local eating disorders center here. So many different life coaching, so many different things. And I had these periods of time of success, but it was really decades of a struggle for me on that just kind of journey and trajectory.
So I'm sitting here going, okay, I totally agree with you, like emotions, right? Same thing for me. Like I don't, it's interesting too, because I'll also share something I shared in the conversation earlier today with a friend of mine, is that in my family as well, like you only know what you learn, right? And they can't teach you something they don't know. And my parents, same thing in my family. Like if you were emotional, if there was anything they had a disagreement, they just went off, they didn't talk to each other. And so that's all that I knew. And I think I've shared that on the podcast before, like, so, I mean, I was in high school. I graduated early. I was 17 years old when I graduated high school. So I immediately got my own place because I was working my own job and doing my own thing. And at that point back then, I never really had the challenge with the eating. I feel like it came up later for me. But I remember saying, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to live in a house where, we don't talk to each other when we're mad. And then it was the weirdest thing was like, everybody was happy, but it's like, did you resolve anything? Because you didn't talk about what made you mad, right? So it was like,
exactly.
And I remember, so I never, I didn't have the opportunity to go to college. My school where I went to, they didn't have those great conversations around, this is what you do. I went to school where there was a lot of the kids already automatically knew they were going. So they didn't, the smaller, lower class, like myself, middle class or lower, we didn't have those guidance counselors to help us with that. But I worked since I was 14 years old and I always succeeded at whatever I did. But I remember that my parents were just like that. So when I met my husband at the young age of 19 and then we moved in together, if we would have a disagreement, all I knew was not to talk. That's all I knew. Just be quiet, right? Don't say a word. It'll all go away, supposedly.
That's right.
My husband was the opposite. He was just like, we need to talk about what's on your mind. So when I would shut up and not say anything, he would start having conversations for me. And then I'd be like, I wasn't going to say that to you, And so now he'll tell you, now he can't get me to be quiet when we, but it's been, we've been together 35 years. So it's been a great, process and everything. But you're right. Like that childhood, it's interesting too, like our childhood stuff that can come up or things, you know, the binging, like things that can come up. I tried in my group of women every Sunday evening. We have a group. It's called our Shira League, and it's a community of women where we get together and we just talk about whatever is on our mind. We start out with dancing, so we all kind of release endorphins that are stressing us out. But it's always Sunday evening. It's a good way to end and start the week. And so we talk about things around, you know, our emotions. And we tried so hard to work on an inner child book with the group. And they like that, they couldn't break it. They couldn't, that digging deep, like they were not ready. We actually, I have a friend that helps me with it. We actually had to stop. I'm like, they are not getting this, right? And when you told the story of, you know, sitting in there against that door with those candy wrappers around you, I was like, I get it. I realized, as you said it too, that, you know, reminding me of the different emotions that would come up. Like, I remember when I was getting married and my dad and my mom had an argument. My dad told my mother, you can't go to her bridal shower. I was so upset. My mom didn't come to my bridal shower because they got an argument. I'm like going, why? Stand up to him and be like, no, she's our daughter. I'm going, you know, whatever. But that was a relationship they had. So I remember then like binging too. So as you say that, the things that kind of come in my mind, those things that trigger you.
Yeah, well, and what's fascinating too, sometimes with binging, there are so many different reasons why a person starts binging. So many. It could be restriction. It could be, you know, not dealing with emotions, kind of like we talked about. It could be nervous system. You're trying to, you know, kind of regulate your own nervous system. Maybe your needs aren't being met. There's also sometimes we end up binging because we are not living the way we want to, or maybe we're not saying something. So sometimes I'm going to guess a lot of listeners are going to be like, "Ooh, I've done that." But like sometimes we'll end up almost eating at somebody, right? So you get upset, you want to say something, you want to have that communication, but maybe you don't really know how. Maybe you weren't taught how to, you know, have a productive conflict. And so you've kind of learned like you just need to be quiet. You need to be the quiet one. You need to be the docile one. You know, you don't ruffle feathers or whatever. And so you have this kind of anger or frustration. And instead of saying anything, sometimes we end up eating like as that. So it's kind of like, you know, it's like, well, I've totally done this, you know, like that. Well, I'll show you. And, you know, you're eating all of this food. And of course, nobody else is receiving this message. But it's absolutely another reason that really happens.
Yeah. And so I'm as we're talking, I'm thinking, wow, those are the obstacles, like those are some early obstacles that came up for you. So what was it that made you go, okay, I have a challenge here. I need to get over this challenge and do something about it. So what brought that to light and how did you start that journey?
You know, the journey started really probably from the first binge of just like, I got to figure, like, this is terrible. I've got to figure this out. And I really never stopped, although it was just this journey of, I would have periods of time of what I considered success, periods of time of what I considered, you know, being really in the thick of it. And through every single thing that I went through, I did believe change was possible. But there was always, I learned something new in every piece of it. But for me, the missing piece was really understanding the nervous system. So I went through therapy. I went through various things. I went to get certified as a life coach. Had a lot of success really in being able to just understand what I was thinking about, what I was thinking about myself, what I was thinking about food, how some of that really kind of created my experience of just like that internal dialogue. And so that was really powerful for me. I had periods of time of restrictive diets and all of these other things. But what changed really everything for me, and what I think for me was really kind of like that missing link, was really getting to understand the nervous system and understanding how the body works, and understanding that we all have this area. It's called the window of tolerance, but I like to call it home base. It's basically this area where you are in your kind of thinking mind. You're in your body, you're in your mind, you're able to do the things you want to do, you're able to go towards your goals and, you know, kind of take on challenges. You're in that kind of like sweet spot. But there's also then we have the survival response, right? That fight or flight, very high activity. Maybe it's anxiety, worry, those types of things. And then there's the low, the kind of like freeze response where, it's kind of the depression, hopelessness, despair. Well, what happens is so many of us, particularly those of us who binge, we spend a lot of time up above the window of tolerance. And so we're in that very fight or flight state, lots of energy, lots of anxiety. And if we haven't learned what to do with that, or even that this is just kind of what's happening within our nervous system, then we very reasonably and rationally teach ourselves, oh, you know what works to kind of drain this energy is food. I can eat energy and then it will bring me down. But what happens is when we eat so much food within a binge, it actually brings you down below that window of tolerance. And then you're in that more freeze state. And so there's kind of like this constant journey up and down between, this kind of like anxious place where it feels like there's way too much energy going on that you need to escape from. So then we use food and it goes way down. And then we're in the shame and depression. And then, it's kind of like this constant roller coaster. And so learning about that and like, oh, wait, I'm not broken after all. Actually, I have just lived my life so far above the window and I've constantly been going and doing and sometimes the binges actually were my body's way to say, stop. If you're not going to stop, if you're not going to rest, I will force you. Because the only time I would stop would be after a binge when I would just be on the couch, like scrolling Facebook or scrolling the internet because I couldn't do anything else. So in some cases, it was really my body like, all right, we'll help you out here. So understanding that nervous system and being able to then realize where I was living a lot of the time, being able to then kind of expand my ability, my capacity to be more in that home base place and to recognize when I was going up above or going down below and what I could do to kind of really bring myself more into that space. The binging really it kind of unwinds itself when you are taking care of all of the other things that are going on that you're covering up, that you're using the food to cover up with. A lot of times it actually unwinds itself when you're able to connect with the body and really listen to what it's telling you, what's going on, and working with it instead of just trying to stop this terrible thing. It's not really about the food. We want to focus so much on the food, but it's just really not. It's really what's going on in your body internally and how to kind of work with that and navigate that.
So I think for our listeners, the big key here too is to learn how to listen to your body, like to learn what those triggers are and to understand, because like, especially for women, if you're a CEO mom or you're, work in a professional world, whatever that is. And I call CEO moms, if you're new here, I don't say stay at home mom because you're running a business at home. I call you a CEO mom, but we have so much that's on our plate that we take care of everybody first and we forget about us. So then we're not listening to those triggers or those things that tell us that we're up here. And so we go binge, or like you said, we do the recovery binge and all that. And so like, I think what you're saying in my hearing is that we really have to be in tune to that and really need to listen to what we're hearing our body tell us.
Yes. And what's remarkable is when your body is in that survival state. So when it's above that window of tolerance, below that window of tolerance, that's the place where, we have all experienced why am I not, I know what I need to be doing right now, but I'm not doing it. Like, why am I not doing the thing? Well, what happens is when we're in the survival response, literally your brain, its main job is to keep you alive, right? And so if it is in that survival response and it thinks there is a threat to your survival, you don't even have access. In some cases, you don't have access to the thinking part of your brain, which is the part of your brain that can be like, oh, you know what? If we eat that, maybe we'll feel terrible afterwards. That part really isn't even available when we're really in that kind of heightened survival response. So I was thinking about you, you're talking about your son, like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine how much your survival brain, right, is like you've been literally in a survival response. And that's going to show up in different ways depending on, kind of where your nervous system generally goes. Um, but it's like when you're in that place, the ability, the rationing, the reasoning, oh, I've got these things to do in this goal, like that's just not even, it's not even available in some of those times.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I remember the first like 48 hours when he passed, I was like, I couldn't eat. Like I felt like I couldn't eat anything, but I knew I needed to eat because I knew my body needed the energy. So I just was finding like I was just going, okay, I just make a protein shake because at least I get some protein in me, And I was like, if I ate anything else, it was just like going right through me without being graphic. But it was just like I couldn't keep it in. But I knew if I could drink a protein shake, that was sustaining me, and I had those a couple times during the day. And then I was like, people were bringing food. I'm like, oh, like, it's so great that the different foods, but and my friends were great because they were like, what kind of food? I'm like, anything as healthy as you can would be great. But I know I have people here, so I'm just being very thankful. But you're right. Like that whole, like that, that whole, all those emotions and everything that play into it. And then, you start like, I was sitting here listening to you and going, yeah, I remember that feeling. I remember, feeling like, well, I'm already here, so I might as well just keep going there. Right. And so you don't, and you get out of the routine. Like, yeah, I did get out of the routine of sitting on my front swing and just spending time in the morning, meditating or journaling. Like that sort of went out when all that was happening. Cause like you said, I was that protective mama on going, okay, I got to take care of my older son. And, and then that's when a friend of mine, just really, she's the one who brought me, we were talking before we hopped on, where it said, listen, whatever emotion comes, let it come. Because if you suppress it, it's not doing you any good either. Right. And so I love that you share that. And for those that are listening, emotions are going to come. And if you think you're going to bury them, they're not buried. They're going to come back up. So getting that help is so important. So when you work with your clients, tell us like, what's the approach you take and what can somebody expect when they work with you?
Yeah, I want to just go back real quick to what you were just talking about, emotions. I love the analogy and the visual of a beach ball. So if your emotions are a beach ball and you're like, no, I can't feel the grief because I may never stop crying, right? That's a kind of a common thing that makes people kind of afraid to really let that go. So we push it underwater, right? And you keep pushing and you keep pushing. Well, that beach ball is going to come out. And the more you push it, the higher the beach ball is actually going to come out of the water. So it's like these emotions that we think we can't handle in the moment, the more we suppress them and the more we cover them up with food, the more we're pushing that beach ball down under the water so that when we do let those emotions come out, I mean, emotions, they are still there. Like they don't just disappear and go away. So when they do come out, then there's that much more to them and that much more force. So in reality, while we think we're like hitting the easy button of like, oh no, I don't want to deal with that, what we're really doing is making it even bigger than if we, just allowed it to be part of our process, like at that time and in that moment.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Yeah, because you're right. Because if you keep pushing, it's gonna pop. It's gonna come. It's going to burst. You can keep filling the ball up, but eventually it's got to come out. So
right. Exactly.
So share with us when you work with your clients, like how do they tackle the beach ball?
Yeah. So basically it's really kind of a process. So what I like to do is really understand why a person binges in the first place. I find that really understanding why you binge helps you to kind of go from this like terrible thing that I do, and I hate that I do it, and I hate that I binge. I love getting a person to the place that's like, oh, that makes sense. Because then once something makes sense, then we can start to work with it. Once we can understand why, like understand kind of how it started, and then why you're still in that process. Like, what are these things? There's probably a good 8 reasons why a person binges. And so I work with them really individually to see, okay, what are these things? Here are these 8 things going on. We can tackle them in any order, but we got to kind of look at first what's going on. It's kind of like looking at the puzzle, the piece of the puzzle to kind of make sure we put the right pieces in at the right time. And then the second part is really understanding developing trust with your body. Like I find that trusting your body is so important because what we particularly as women are, we're told eat this, don't eat that. Eat these foods, don't eat these foods. Eat at these times, and men are told these things too, but there's just this different standard, right? Of for women and bodies. And so we've basically, most of us have totally overridden any sort of communication with our bodies because, XYZ diet told us to do this. XYZ magazine said, eat this many calories. XYZ, we've heard all of these different messages from over the years. And just think about over the last 20 years, how the diets have changed, right? So it's like, we've gone from the low fat era to the high fat era to the keto to the South Beach to the, intermittent fasting to all of these different things. And everybody's just on this kind of like mental, like using their minds to decide what to eat. So what I do is I work with my clients to help them really gain that communication with their bodies, back with their bodies, start trusting their body, that their body, your body will tell you what to eat. It will tell you when to eat. It will tell you how much to eat. And then you also then start to notice and you learn how to distinguish what part of this communication is my body and what part is my brain. So yes, the brain is going to, when it's in that like survival, like, oh my gosh, like, I've got to eat all the things, like you learn to notice that is different than the kind of communication and the signals and language that you get from your body. So it's really kind of distinguishing between the two and then getting out of your head and all of that noise, getting into your body, and then working with what I was talking about earlier with the nervous system, right? Like really figuring out where do you typically be and land in your nervous system. We kind of expand your capacity to be with emotions, to be with more challenging emotions, so that when you have the ones that are kind of uncomfortable, but not the big, huge ones, you get more experience and more. It's like going to the gym, right? The emotional gym. We just expand our ability and our capacity to be with these things and to be with this discomfort, which also then translates into being able to be with the discomfort of wanting to eat something in the moment, and knowing like, okay, I can allow this to be here, just like I can allow this frustration that meeting that I just had didn't go my way. Like I can be with this and allow it to be a part of my experience without reacting to it or running away from it or trying to hide from it.
I love that because you're right that how we react and how we listen to our brain, like the whole nervous system, everything. It's so true. Like it does guide us. I mean, and not just in eating, but in everything in our life. And so when you learn to be in tune with that, I think that's such a powerful tool that we can have as human beings. Be like, oh, this is what it's telling me. So this is not how I should react. This is the way I know it's better for me to react. And I love that you're doing that. And I just think it's so powerful when we can really be in tune. I know that that's when, things aren't always perfect, but they can run a little smoother for us.
Exactly. And then we can understand this is my body. This is my nervous system, right? Just being able, instead of like, oh my gosh, I'm so freaked out. I'm so stressed out. Like I'm a ball of anxiety, right? Like instead of identifying with the emotion, we can see it as, oh, okay, here's what's happening in my nervous system. I mean, my husband and I will tell each other like, okay, I'll tell him like, I'm at the top of the window right now. And what that means is we have this window of tolerance. And when we're inside the window, we can function. You and I right now, we are both in the window, right? Like we're good. We can connect. We can have this conversation. Well, when you can start to feel yourself getting above as your energy rises. And that's when you start to notice, like you feel the intensity, you feel the energy in your body. You may start feeling like you want to just get up. Maybe you want to go to the pantry, right? Or like maybe it might happen. Here's an example everyone listening can relate to. You might be on the phone with customer service and you've been on the phone for 45 minutes. They are not solving your problem. Or maybe you were on hold for 30 minutes and then all of a sudden you got disconnected, right? Just like that. I just want to, throw the phone out the window. So as you're going up, now that might be you're already above the window, depending, right? But if you notice yourself and you kind of start going up towards the top, I will tell my husband, like, I am getting to the top of the window. And if I don't do something now, I'm going to keep going. And I know for me, when I'm above the window, just like I said, you don't have the access to your thinking brain. So you're not going to make as many good rational decisions about whatever. You're going to be more likely to react to what's going on with you. So if I can notice, oh, I'm getting to the top of the window, then I know I can take 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, and I can do certain things to kind of drain some of that energy so that I don't end up reacting. I don't end up going to the pantry. I don't end up blowing up at somebody or whatever, whatever the case is. Like, I can see it's not me. I'm not personalizing it. I can just see what's happening with my nervous system as it's happening.
And I equate that for me. I've created this word. So when I start feeling that way, I'll give myself a word. My word is buffalo because I'm a big Bills fan, but I'll go buffalo. And it's so funny because even my kids, when they were younger, they would go, Mom, buffalo, because they could see me, like, right? They'd be like, oh, she's a little angst up there. And they'll go, Mom, buffalo, So, yeah, so that's kind of, and for me, that's sort of like the stopwatch to say, oh, wait a minute, you're getting a little high up here. So let's bring it back down, and things like that. I also, so for Chuck and I, a lot of times what we'll do is like, if something, we got to discuss something or whatever, our big thing is, are you open to receiving? Because if it kind of says, okay, this is going to be some deep stuff we might talk about, are you truly open to receiving? Or even I have friends, some people ask me for my opinion. I'll go, are you open to receiving? Because if you're going to ask me my opinion, I'm going to give it to you, but you may not like to hear it. So I just have found that when I say, are you open to receiving? It just says, it lets the other person go, oh, maybe I'm really not open yet. And I don't go in that space with them.
Right. And here's a tip for everybody that whether you are, whether food is your thing or not, just talking about the nervous system, right? We've talked about it enough for people to be able to identify, okay, I kind of know what that like window of tolerance is where, we're both in that place. And so when you're asking, like, are you open to receiving? It's kind of like code for, are you in the window? Like, are you like in this place where you and I can have this conversation where our thinking brains are on board? So great note for anybody, whether you work with anybody, whether it's your partner, your spouse, you are a parent, your children, know this. If you are in the window of tolerance and the other person that you want to communicate with is not, if they are above, if they are below, they can't really receive feedback. There's no learning happens outside of the window, which is why you may have tried to have a conversation with somebody who's like totally checked out or totally like angry, irritated, frustrated. Nothing beneficial is going to happen in that place. It's not possible because the survival brain is on board. It's using all the function. So that rational brain that can really think and take in new information and kind of assess and look at things, not even possible. So don't try to force a conversation with anybody who does not appear to be within the window. It's not going to be productive for anybody. If you are not in the window, like significantly not in the window, don't try to force yourself to do something that's going to take a lot of mental capacity. It's not going to be productive. These are ways you can work with yourself. You can work with your nervous system. You can work with other people and kind of like, just kind of see like, where do I think they are in their nervous system? That can really give you a clue as to how to navigate, how to communicate with whoever it is, that's in your circle.
Yeah. And I think also too, on everything we're sharing here with that nervous and understanding that it opens up and creates a different way of having better communication with those that you love and those that, you're communicating with, whether it's at work or whatever, like that mental fitness. It just gives you that better mental fitness. And, you can have those conversations. So if somebody's not in the zone, it's good to be like, okay, let's circle back, right? Just let it sit in the shelf for a little bit. And it may not, and you may find that you have a different outcome with it. So I just love that you're sharing that. That's so true. So I want to know, so I think I already know the answer to this, but I want to know what I know the answer because we read your bio, but for self-care, like tell us about these triathlons. That's always been my dream, is to do the what is it in DC in October, the Marine Corps Marathon.
Oh, yes.
It's on my bucket list to participate and complete the marathon. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. So I want to know, tell us about what you do for self-care and what led to the triathlons, what got you so into that.
Okay, I will. Well, what I do for self-care is actually not what you would guess. What I do for self-care is actually nap. I love to nap. I have become a power napper. I can lay down for maybe, I check in with myself. How long do I need? Maybe 15, 20 minutes. My husband always jokes because I'll set the timer on my, on my iPad. And most times I will actually wake up within 1 to 2 minutes before it actually even goes off. And I did not used to rest. I did not, so napping is absolutely my self-care. But triathlon is like my passion, I would say, in addition to helping women with all of this. But I got into triathlon, it's been 20 years ago now. And a girlfriend told me she was training to do a sprint triathlon. And I thought, I wonder if there's any of these around here in Albuquerque. So I got online and I looked it up and I found one and I signed up. And my husband came and watched, and I had my helmet on backwards. And I thought that they were stopping traffic I thought they were stopping me for the traffic. And the police officer was like, no, you go. I'm telling the car to stop, just that's where I started. And 2 years later, my husband was like, I could do this. And so we basically trained together. We raced together. And it's been a huge journey. It's been amazing. I was speaking of overcoming obstacles, in November of 2019, I was in a bike accident. A cow crossed the road in front of us, and my husband put on the brakes to not hit the cow, and he did not hit the cow, but I ran into his front wheel. And so I went down and I fractured my pelvis. And so it was a long road of recovery from getting back from that. And I managed to just achieve a dream come true, which was qualifying for the Ironman World Championships in Kona, which are coming up here in just over 40 days in early October. And I'm just blown away. I mean, it was just like what I thought was an impossible goal is becoming a reality. So it's just incredible.
That is so cool. And to go to Kona, I love that. The Hawaii is just such a beautiful, that's going to be amazing. I'm so excited for you. I love power naps too. My husband actually says the same thing about me. I'll set my phone. I'm like going, all right, we'll lay down here for like 10, 15 minutes. He's like, how can you do that? I'm like, I just do. So I love a good power nap. It's really, really
so great.
So I want to share your quote because I love this quote. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. I think that, and that's by Albert Einstein. I think that goes a lot to what we've been learning today is like, if we don't listen to our brain and listen to our nervous system, we're never going to change our outcome of our problem. Right. And so I love that. Why is that quote so important to you?
Well, it's so important to me because it's like so many times our problems aren't really what we think they are. Right. And so it's like we have this one mindset of this is the problem and this is why. And until we can change our mind and change our thinking, we're not going to be able to solve the problem. So where for me, I was thinking the problem was the binging, the problem was the way that I was eating and the food and that I was out of control and all of these things. And it was only until I was like, oh, wait, and really able to kind of shift to really see what the problem was. The binging was just a symptom. Like I love to see binges really as like, it's almost like lights on a dashboard. So if you binge, it's a signal. Like, so what we need to do is we need to go under the hood and say, okay, what's going on here? Let's see what's going on under the hood to see what's going on. It's never about the food itself. It's something else that's going on underneath.
Yeah, that's so true. Checking underneath that hood is so important, not just for your car, but for us personally.
That's right.
So amazing. So I know you have some stuff coming up. And so when this episode's released, we are actually going to be in the middle of our pajama retreat that we're starting. So for those that are listening, we are in the middle of our pajama retreat when you listen to this. And so we will have our 7th annual pajama retreat will be the following September 2023. But I know, and we'll put links and all that in there, but I know you've got a great masterclass coming up and you've got some information on that. So would you like to share that with everybody?
Yeah, so basically, I offer a masterclass every month. I do one on different topics. I am so bummed that I won't be attending your pajama retreat because I'll be getting ready for Kona, but I just think it's amazing what you're doing. So the master classes, I have a couple coming up. I think one probably will have already aired by the time this one airs, but you can always go to my website to get the recording. And the one I'm preparing now is how perfectionism perpetuates binge eating. So I'm really excited about that one. And then the one for October is going to be how to talk to your loved ones about your secret eating. So many people, I mean, I just remember I was married for probably close to 2 years before I told my husband about my binging. And that was such a difficult conversation, but it's such an important part of the journey. And a lot of people just don't know how to do that. And so that's going to be the masterclass in October. And we've got more masterclasses coming up. So you can get any information and sign up for any of the masterclasses or get the replays from previous masterclasses on my website.
And tell everybody your website.
Yeah, so my website is janepilger.com. It's pretty much just as it sounds, janepilger.com.
Awesome. And so make sure you guys all go check out that there. Check out her master classes. Those sounds great, especially communicating like with your loved one. I remember when I first was on my journey, I didn't tell my husband what I was doing because of the cost. So I was literally going out, making my shakes, going out and throwing the container, the shake him into the trash. Because like, I didn't want him to know. Right. But once I told him, he's like, why would you keep that from, but it's that whole thing, that brain telling us one thing that I wasn't listening to. So I just love that. So it's been a fun having you on here, fun talking about the brain, our nervous system. So everybody that's listening, make sure that you go check out janepilger.com, check all the masterclasses out, share this episode. Cause I know many of you have heard many things in today's episode that you probably are thinking, oh, I should share this with my friend, my sister, my mom, my dad, whoever that is. Make sure you share this episode in their life because it can make a big, big difference. And so now we're going to shift. I've already forewarned Jane. She knows our next little thing that we do. So we have, for those that are listening, you already know what we're doing. For those that are new listeners, at the end of every episode, we do these better questions, better life questions. And so they're a deck of cards. And my friend Carol Gill, who is our house sponsor for our pajama retreats for the past few years, including this year, she and her friend created this. So Carol Gill and Diane Allen, but you can go to betterquestionsbetterlife.com. I get nothing for this. I'm not one of those, you see on all the social media, oh, go buy this because I'll get a kickback. No, I just believe in these cards. These cards have carried me through. A deck of these cards went with my son to heaven. So he would have these to kind of guide him as well. But they're just great cards that you can meditate over, you can journal over, or just ask yourself the question. So we're going to shuffle these and Jane's going to pick a card and she's going to answer the question. So you tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. So, this was a great one. How am I living my life with intention?
Oh, I love that. I really am. I live my life with intention every day, with an intention of how I want to feel, how I want to show up in the world, what I want to get done, who I want to impact, and really just living the life. I really feel like I'm living the life that I really want to. And intention is such a key part of all of it, really every aspect of life. Just that intention is so powerful, especially when it comes to food. Eating with intention is pretty much the opposite of binging, right? It's just powerful.
Yeah, such the opposite. And for me to answer that question, especially right now in this day, you and I were talking earlier, as I was saying before, that, my son's like, nothing got you down. And I really feel like that's my intention right now, is to continue that. He loved that about me. And there's no reason to change that, even though he's not here and he's watching over us. So I just think that's just so powerful to continue doing that. So that's how I'm trying to be very intentional, finding, even when the waves of, like you were calling it, potholes, when those waves come through, even when I hit that big outburst of cry, I still try to make myself think of something that was joyous about that. In fact, this morning, and if those that are listening, and if you don't believe in this, then don't listen to this, but I told my husband, you get signs. And so this morning, And I've had quite a few signs since he's passed, but this morning we're laying in bed in the dead of the night and somebody's going to go, oh, your battery was just need to be new. Our fire alarm smoke detector went off in our bedroom only once. It hasn't gone off the rest of the day, just once. So I told my husband, I go, that's your son checking on you. So it's, so I just love that. But this has been such fun. And I really love that, for our listeners and for myself, the whole understanding our brain, understanding our nervous system is so, so important. And so I'm excited that everybody's going to watch this and listen and learn. And hopefully you guys all took great notes. And if you didn't, go back and repeat it because you've gotten some great tips today. So I'm going to share as we close out the show, as I do all the time. If you're listening, we are in the middle of our 6th annual pajama retreat, but we have tickets available for the 7th. So you can go to wslivingretreats.com. That's wslivingretreats.com. And if you buy your ticket for next year's retreat by September 30th, you'll get this year's pricing. So you can't beat that. And the price includes everything except for your food on Sunday and your transportation to the retreat. So it's a great deal. You can't beat it. But I just want to remind everybody that we come into this world as a beautiful oyster. We're a little rough on the outside, but as you open up the oyster and you find your inner pearl of greatness, it's waiting to shine on you. So I hope you guys have a great day. And remember to go find your inner pearl.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you.